Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our Cosmo Metals Investor Briefing webinar. I'm Nicola Gazzatti of Investor Relations Consultancy Corporate Storytime. Cosmo Metals is an ASX-listed exploration company acquiring some key projects in New South Wales to complement its existing projects in Western Australia. Joining me today is Cosmo Metals' recently appointed Managing Director, Ian Prentice, who will be sharing an investor update following the company's recent announcement of its intention to acquire the Bingara and Nundle Gold, Antimony and Copper Projects in the New England Orogen of New South Wales. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Ian. Thanks, Ian.
Many thanks, Nicola, and it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the people who signed on, and for those people who will be listening on the replay later on. A great opportunity for us, as Nicola said, to really introduce to our investors the opportunity that we're looking at acquiring over in New South Wales, the Bingara and Nundle project. So multi-commodity package of projects that haven't really had much exploration on them for the last 3 decades. So a fantastic opportunity for us to get amongst it and go and look for some really exciting commodities. Our standard disclaimer. So we'll launch in. So our high-grade New South Wales gold antimony project. So the map on the right-hand side shows you where we're located. So we're right up in the north east of New South Wales, in the southern part of the New England Orogen. So interestingly, the New England Orogen trends all the way up the east coast to Townsville, and there's some really significant deposits all the way through that Orogen. So we're straddling the Peel Fault. We've got our 2 project areas, very large land holding across those 2 areas, as it talks about there. As I mentioned earlier, multi-commodity focus, so really interesting for us. We've got some really interesting gold targets, some copper targets, and notably some antimony targets, all within those blocks of land that we've got there. Proven mineralisation. There's been workings across these areas since the mid 1800s, so a very well established province of mineralisation. I think one of the key takeaways when we did look at all this area was the antimony prospectivity. New South Wales Geological Survey did an exercise back in 2017 looking at the prospectivity of the southern portion of the New England Orogen, and identified a couple of really high prospectivity areas for antimony, which just so happen to coincide with our project area. So really exciting on that front. Refreshed board, and we'll touch on the board a bit later on, but I guess, again, a really key part of what we're doing as we're moving forward is this fresh board and a real fresh approach to how we're moving things forward at Cosmo. So diving into Bingara itself, we're really fortunate at Bingara that we control the entire historical Bingara goldfield. So gold, antimony, tungsten, 30-kilometre long origin there, orogenic gold trend there, and parallel to that, we've got a VMS copper gold zinc zone. So we've got these 2 really long, extensive, well-defined mineralisation corridors, gold and base metals, across along the full trend of that project area. Talks about sporadic exploration. There's been no drilling across this area in more than 30 years, and really minimal modern exploration. And we can expand on that further on, but that's a real key attribute, I guess, looking at this and saying there's areas where you can walk up to old workings that have never had a drill hole in them. So really exciting opportunity for us. You can see in the yellow on the map there is the significant gold trend. So we've got sort of along that 30-kilometre gold corridor, the Bingara goldfield, we've identified 5 significant sort of gold trends within that are going to be a real key focus for our work. And similarly on the VMS trend. So we've got that 20-kilometre trend, and I guess one of the key areas that we're looking at initially is going to be the Mount Everest area down on the southern portion of that belt. Again, 2.5 kilometre long belt, really significant mineralisation, some really deep shafts and a lot of production coming out of there, but very, very little exploration. We've actually, as part of the process of the acquisition of this project, we've actually completed a airborne drone-supported geophysical survey, the SAM survey, over Mount Everest. So that's something that we committed to doing in this transition period of time, and we're going to have that data coming out in the next little while. Diving in on one of the key targets, I said there's 5 different sort of significant trends along that gold corridor. And one of the ones that we'll be looking at getting involved in really early on is this Spring Creek hidden treasure. So this is one of the areas that has had some drilling on it, and you can see the results there. Very shallow, wide, high-grade intercepts into the Spring Creek mineralisation in particular. So yeah, you've got a couple of kilometres of trend there identified from Spring Creek through Hidden Treasure up to Doctor's Reef. That whole trend, the real focus of historical work's been down at Spring Creek, and as I say, yeah, very shallow, good widths, good grade. We're really keen to get in there, and yeah, that'll be one of our early targets for drilling. So again, in this transition period, we're working through and towards shareholder approval for the acquisition. We're really focusing on getting ourselves ahead of the game there. So we're doing work to design up some programs and get into a point where we can get permitting and approvals underway so we can be drilling as soon as possible on that area. The Nundle area to the south, so south of Tamworth, again, straddling the really important regional Peel Fault. Quite a little bit different here. We've got the southern portion, southern 2/3 or so of the historic Nundle goldfield, based on historic records, which, again, dating from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, so some of the records may not be have been recorded quite as well as you'd expect. But historic records indicate greater than 150,000 ounces of gold has come out of that goldfield. So a really, really important producer, and again, very little work has been done to follow up on that on the I guess the identified mineralisation that's already in those zones. So we've got that trend of gold mineralisation. We've got some antimony zones to the north there. We've got the Zwers scheelite mine, which is a antimony tungsten project or prospect. So really exciting. And I think one of the real sleepers in here, which got us quite excited, is down in the southeastern corner of that area. We've got the Barnard Hut and Back Barb intrusive related. So very early stage work was done back in the 1970s. Surface work identified copper mineralisation at surface. Really exciting zone. We're sort of looking at a model of the Mount Morgan style. So Mount Morgan sits up in the northern part of the New England Orogen. Now, historically, Mount Morgan's produced 7.7 million ounces of gold, something like 360,000 tonnes of copper. That's the sort of model that we're chasing down here at Barnard Hut and Back Barb. So really exciting opportunity. We've done some really early initial reconnaissance and just really confirming that there is copper mineralisation at surface down in that part of the world. Honing in a bit more on this is on the gold trend. So up on the main Nundle goldfield, the Folly line, again, a whole series of these prospects that have been identified, historical workings that are 150 years old. There's been some surface work done on these things, some mapping done on them, but very limited drilling. The drilling that has been done, particularly down at the Gap, has delivered up some really nice results as shown here. Interesting, this area is classified as state forest, which in this case meant that it was a pine plantation. And so the pine plantation has been harvested, in the last year or so. So for the first time, you can actually walk around without the disturbance of the forest around you, and you can actually start to see some exposure and start to map the geology and track through for some of the mineralisation through these systems. So a really, really interesting system of mineralisation. So again, one of those areas that we'd like to be able to get on the ground and start to do some more work as soon as we can get all that lined up. A little bit about the acquisition itself, which was announced a couple of weeks ago now. We've paid a non-refundable exclusivity fee, gives us 60 days exclusivity. Now, this goes to shareholder approval. Currently, we're looking at the 28th of March, about there for the shareholder meeting for the approval for this transaction. On approval, there'll be another cash payment of $250,000. Then the balance of the consideration is around shares. So there's going to be an equity component that will be paid initially, and then there's some deferred consideration that will be payable on achieving a couple of milestones. The Nundle tenement, for instance, is in renewal. So we've actually lodged the renewal. We're going through that process now with the department. So that'll be a key milestone for the vendors, and they'll then get some more consideration shares on the delivery of that. there are some modest contingent payments really around our success, delivering on our exploration and the work we're going to do, defining some resources, then moving through the different phases to get to a development decision. So there's those structures in there, and there will be a retained royalty, albeit that we do have the right to claw back some of that at $500,000 for 0.5%. I mentioned that we've been doing some work on the ground, and that was part of the conditions under the agreement that we did reach with the parties, the vendors. So we have been doing some work, and I think that's really important from our point of view, in that we are getting on the ground, we are getting ahead of the curve. So as soon as we do get shareholder approval for the transaction, we're ready to really move into a more advanced exploration phase. The pro forma capital structure, as I say, we're looking at completing this transaction by late March, early April. We're also in the midst of an entitlement issue, so that was the prospectus for that was lodged last Wednesday. A 4 for 5 entitlements to raise $1.6 million, and you can see the metrics there. Even at the issue price, post the transaction, post the capital raise, we'll have a very modest market cap of around 4.6 at that issue price. We've got a fantastic supportive register. Top 20 have got a really big chunk of the company, which is a really nice place to be. Board and management. So Peter Bird and Andrew Patterson were obviously the founding directors and a real key part of moving this business forward. Ranko and myself joined last August as part of the board renewal process, and we really, I guess, rolled our sleeves up from that point of the four of us to really start to look at project acquisition opportunities to sort of bolster our existing portfolio. Interestingly, I came on board and looked at what was in existing assets in Cosmo and really liked them, but certainly there was an opportunity to add to that, and that's what we're doing with the New South Wales assets. We've got a really good, strong technical focus in our team, albeit that the sort of blend of experience between Peter, Andrew, and myself, albeit we're geologists, we've got a really wide range of skill sets across different facets of the industry. And then Ranko came on board as well, as I said, at the same time as myself, and he really brings that strong corporate background. I think we've got a really strong, balanced board that is really focused on delivering for our shareholders. So, a bit of a wrap up before we move into the question time. We're looking at acquiring a couple of projects that have got high grade historical mining and exploration. So, fishing where the fish are. You've got really good areas that have had significant production across gold, antimony, copper, zinc. So, really fantastic place to be. As I mentioned earlier, the antimony prospectivity that was defined through this work that the New South Wales Geological Survey did back in 2017 does highlight the areas that we're at as being some of the best antimony prospectivity in that part of the world. So that's a really exciting place to be as well. We do have some walk-up targets, and I guess what I really like about this is we've got some walk-up targets and prospects that we can get into straight away. We've got this real portfolio of commodities. So we've got a blend, we've got the gold, we've got the VMS dominated by copper, we've got the antimony, we've got some tungsten. So it's a really exciting, opportunity. So you've got this portfolio of commodities all within, that two project areas. Negligible modern exploration, which again, coming from the West and having worked, extensively, I guess throughout Australia, but also a lot in WA, to walk into areas where you can walk up to old mine shafts that have never had a drill hole put in is really an amazing opportunity for us. And we do have this really attractive re-rate potential. As I say, we're going to have a very modest EV post the capital raise, post the completion of the transaction, and I think we've got some great leverage on success from our exploration efforts to really drive our business forward. At that, I'll wrap up and I'll pass back to Nicola for any questions.
Thank you so much, Ian. That was a very comprehensive presentation. We're now going to jump into our Q&A session. So, Ian, our first question: why is it that Bingara and Nundle projects have seen such little exploration activity in recent decades? And who has previously owned these project areas? And has the company seen or analysed drill samples? And how far along is Cosmo in the due diligence?
Sounds like four questions in one there, Nicola. So yeah, interestingly, I guess in recent times, the vendors that we're looking to acquire these assets from have held these projects for the last 7 or 8 years. So it's been in those hands. Now, as we all know, in the midst of that period of time, COVID came along, and so there were some real restrictions around activity. So the vendors, albeit that they were very keen to do some work on the ground, they got quite limited access. Prior to that, I think there was a few things. I think that part of New South Wales was not really well recognised as being somewhere of significant interest, in the period prior to that, and had various junior explorers who held the ground and didn't do much work. You've got to go back into the 1970s, 80s, and 90s when sort of larger groups actually had a bit of an exploration focus on this area. So they're the ones who did that work back in sort of 30 odd years ago, and beyond that, it's not had a lot of activity, as we say. Maybe if you can repeat some of the other latter parts of that question, Nicola.
So who has previously owned these project areas? Have you seen or analysed any drill samples, and how far along is Cosmo in the due diligence?
So I'll start from the back there. So Cosmo is very advanced in our due diligence. So we've completed quite a lot of work in that space, and so I think we're progressing along very nicely, and we'll look to update the market around that due diligence process, in the not too distant future. Given that there hasn't been a great deal of drilling, and certainly not much drilling in the last 30 years, unfortunately there isn't a lot of historical core or historical samples to view. So no, we haven't really been able to do that, but we've certainly got on the ground and identified drill collars. We've worked out where for instance, somewhere like Spring Creek, we've gone to the collars and identified the collars and confirmed that those holes are actually real. But yeah, there's not a lot of available things like drill core, unfortunately. So we'll get in there and start to develop our own around all that.
Fantastic, Ian. Our second question, can you comment on how much attention the Kanowna Gold project will be getting now that the company will have more funds available? It seems to the person that's asked the question that it has potential to significantly move the share price in the current environment.
Yeah, look, I think, again, as I mentioned during the presentation, when I first came on and did my due diligence to join the board of Cosmo back in August of last year, I was really excited about the projects that we've got in the current portfolio, and Kanowna being one of those. So, I think a really exciting opportunity. So we'll certainly be looking at progressing exploration at Kanowna. That's something that's going to be a key part of what we're doing moving forward. I'm not going to talk about timelines right now. It's something that we'll be looking at in the next little while to really map out what our exploration efforts are and where we're going to be applying those. But yeah, certainly Kanowna does feature strongly in our future plans.
Thanks, Ian. Our next question, what time period are you anticipating for permitting for drilling on the Spring Creek Hidden Treasure Prospects area following the acquisition? When do you think drill testing is likely to occur, and in what form?
Right. So in the presentation we talk about the mid this calendar year, and I think that's a reasonable time frame to be targeting. We haven't locked down what the program is yet, exactly, the details, but my thoughts around it all we'll be doing RC drilling initially at Spring Creek to expand the known mineralisation there. And that'll be sort of, I guess, the real focus there. RC drilling will, I guess, initially be the key form. And look, as I mentioned during the presentation, we are getting on the front foot, getting engaged around all the things we need to do to get our permits and approvals in place. We will be dealing with the New South Wales government in that process, and so somewhat the timing is out of our hands. We've got a reasonable idea of how long that's going to take, and that's why we're talking about mid calendar year for that first drilling.
Thank you, Ian. Our next question. In projected expenditures from the recent capital raise, $350,000 is allocated for project generation and acquisition. Does the company now have further acquisitions under active consideration?
I guess put that into context. So really that the information that went into the prospectus around use of funds was really based on the balance as of a sort of a pro forma balance as at the end of December of last year. So it does capture some of the things that we've already spent, but also some of the things we're planning to spend around this transaction. So for instance, that $350,000, that includes the $250,000 that we'll be paying to the vendors on completion of the acquisition, should shareholders support the acquisition process. So really, that in that case, in that scenario, that those funds are really being applied predominantly to the Bingara and Nundle acquisition opportunity. But I guess we're always looking. Can we bolster our existing assets? Can we look at other bits and pieces? But no, there's nothing significant. We really have to move through and bed down what we're doing, and then get on the ground and really get some news flow and some really good results from the Bingara and Nundle areas.
Excellent. Thanks, Ian. Our next question, in terms of the undrilled prospects at Bingara and Nundle, would you compare this to the WA goldfields in the 80s, when a lot of historic mines have never been drilled?
Absolutely. And I think that was where I first started as a geologist. I was a young geologist in the 80s that was working in the Eastern Goldfields and going out to these places that are now being mined. There's the Riverina, which is being mined at the moment. It was an area that I did some work on early on, but which again, you walked up and there were some historical workings that had never seen a drill hole, and that was one of the things that really blew me away when I got out to the areas over in New South Wales, to be able to walk across a paddock and find some quite significant historical workings that had never been drilled. So yeah, I certainly see there's that I guess that got time gap from an exploration point of view on some of the areas that we've got on these projects.
Thanks, Ian. Our next question, what do you consider to be the next price-sensitive news which may act as a catalyst for Cosmo shares?
Well, look, I think there's going to be a lot of news now. We've, as I say, we've been doing some exploration as part of the acquisition agreement. So there's going to be some news flow around the exploration we've been doing. Clearly, there's the actual bedding down the acquisition itself and moving that forward, and then we move on to the ground, and we're going to be actively exploring as soon as we possibly can post completion, and then we'll get news flow from that. So, as I say, a big target is to be able to drill as quickly as we can, and so everything we'll be doing will be leading towards that and getting drilling done, and then getting hopefully some really positive results out of that program to get everyone excited.
Excellent, Ian. Our next question, do you believe that antimony can retain the high current price level, and would Cosmo consider selling the Shree's Scheelite mine and other antimony prospects to other players in the area, such as Larvotto Resources?
Look, I think in our current geopolitical climate, yes, I think antimony's got a really solid future, and so is tungsten, for that matter. So a couple of commodities that we're fortunate to have within our portfolio. We're just walking in and we've got this fantastic, I guess, portfolio of commodities and opportunities and prospects, and we're going to get in there and we're going to really assess those and explore those and really identify where the value is. One of the key things that I'll be looking at is clearly, working out where the value is and making sure that if someone else wants it, they're going to be paying at least, more than what we think the value is. So certainly if someone does come along and say they want to buy something, then, once we've identified it and we understand the value there, then, there's an opportunity. But really key for us is get in there, do the exploration, identify it and understand what we've got, and then look at the best way to monetize that.
Thanks, Ian. Our next question. You mentioned that a pine plantation has been cleared at Nundle, which has exposed some of the underlying geology along the Folly Line. Is it likely that the plantation will be replanted, or will the area remain clear for exploration activities?
I'm sure it will be replanted. I don't know exactly the timing around that, but that's not going to impact our near-term exploration activities. So, the pine plantation will take some time to get to a point where it was, I guess, causing some challenges around getting around. So I think, we've got a really good window here to be able to really get some good understanding of geology, really map out the trends, identify where potentially there's areas that have not yet been identified along that trend because of the pine plantation that's been there for sort of circa 50 years. So it's a good opportunity for us in the next little while. And even as those trees start to grow, we'll still be able to get around and do the activity. And then, come time to drill on those, then, that's an agreement with the forestry group to work out, we may have to remove a few trees to go and put a hole in, but that'll all be doable as well.
Thank you, Ian. This is our final question for today. You've been a non-executive director of Cosmo for several months. What encouraged you to transition into the managing director position?
Look, I guess I came on, as I said, to Cosmo back in August of last year, and we sat down as a refreshed board and set a very clear strategy around looking at project acquisition opportunities, and really got stuck into that. And in that process, we obviously identified the Bingara and Nundle as an opportunity to pursue. I was quite heavily involved in that process. Took the lead on that, and really could see some fantastic opportunities here. And I guess the quality of these projects, the quality of the exploration opportunity really excited me. And I guess also it sort of harked back to my start in life as a geologist when I was doing exploration in these parts of the world, WA, Northern Territory, Queensland, a lot of gold exploration, copper, base metals exploration. So I could really look back at my history and go, well, I can start to apply all those things in this aspect. But yeah, first and foremost, a really exciting opportunity in a company that is got some fantastic leverage to exploration success. And I thought, well, this is really a good spot for me to be and to really drive this forward.
Great, Ian. That does cover the most of the questions from our audience today. If you feel there's anything we haven't got to, please feel free to send your questions to info@corporatestorytime.com. We'd be happy to follow up. Ian, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts?
Look, yeah, I guess there's a couple of things. So at the moment, we've got our entitlements issue that's live at the moment. So we're really, really encouraging our shareholders to grab the prospectus and have a read of that, and hopefully support that to help move the business forward. And we've got this acquisition that's up for shareholder approval again. Really encouraging shareholders to have a good close look at that, and put their vote in to hopefully support the acquisition, so that we can get, as I say, get on the ground and really get exploring. We as a board are really excited about what we've now got within the Cosmo portfolio, and we're really keen to get started on that journey and start to get some really nice positive news flow out to the market.
We're looking forward to seeing that too, Ian. This does conclude our webinar for today, and a big thank you to Ian and the Cosmo team for the update, and of course to all of you for joining us. Thanks again, Ian.
Thanks, Nicola.